And so from a memorabilia standpoint, matter of fact, since it's a memorabilia show, I'll take you to I don't have much. This is where I call the games, where I got something they gave me from the Tennessee Baseball Hall of Fame. This is like a little painting from when we clinched, against the Cardinals. But this is probably, I don't know how well you can see this. Can you see that any good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It says, Chris, way to go, kid. You made the old man look good. Rocket. Of course, he signs things. Roger Clemons, size 7. And this is him picking me up right after the home run.
Jameel Muhammad and Jeff Cardozo dive into the hobby, which is sports cards, trading cards, as well as all other collectibles, right now on the Meelypod Hobby Podcast, live from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Meelypod Hobby Podcast, coming to you from the Meldon Law Studios. Meldon Law, we won't back down. This guy never does, despite all the worldwide travels and everything going on. That is Jameel Muhammad. I am Jeff Cardozo. It is lucky number 13 episode for us, so hopefully we don't jinx it. But no, We've got a great guest for you. Chris Burke, who now does a lot of broadcasts on college baseball and Major League Baseball, will join us, tell some old stories of back in the day. A guy that he won't hopefully tell any stories about how he owned me, because I couldn't get that dude out. I mean, it's the way it is.
I mean, that's why I made the big leagues, I guess. You were the bar.
That's right.
If you were not getting a hit off Jeff, then I guess they would cut you. I don't know.
Yeah. Very true.
The straight bar, but yeah, things are good, man. We're having shop is in the fall season. Both shops are at a high level. Our breaks are at a high level. We've been able to open up products. This past week, open up, the soccer product that's $15,000 for 5 cards called Topps Dynasty. We had a chance to really, dive into all these other things, and we'll talk more about the wax as well that's coming out. But the hobby is just nonstop, man. And there was a big sale just recently on the Babe Ruth called shot jersey. Heritage Auctions put it up. How they acquired it, I don't know. I haven't looked at that provenance, but it sold for $24 million is what it sold for.
That's unbelievable. And I guess that it does make you think, because we've had so many experts on here in JSA and talking about different things. It's like, how do you track that back and say, hey, that was actually the jersey, or this was that? But certainly they're able to do it, and to have that, it's pretty spectacular.
There's a world of what's called photo matching, right?
Okay.
And so there's a lot of companies out there that there's not a lot. There's a few companies out there that do it well, and they're recognized on the big auction houses, Golden, Heritage. You see those people recognizing these game use photo match. Mm-hmm. So that's tricky though with Babe Ruth's called shot jersey. What kind of photo are you trying to match, right?
Yeah.
And so
black and white.
Yeah,
crumbled
the grainiest of all images. 2 pixels per picture or whatever. So I think with something like that, you're really tracking the history, the provenance, you're being able to say where it's gone, where it's come from. And there's also some telltale signs, how Babe Ruth wore his jersey and markings, things like that they look at. But with modern stuff, it's a lot easier because we have the ability to match it. That right there is a special piece, though. You know what I mean?
Is it worth, because again, I think, some people, and we talk to major league players, NFL athletes, MMA guys and stuff, what decides to actually get to that point? Because maybe the person that had it before that would say, hey, I could have sold it 5 years ago for 10 grand, or what, is there some kind of thought process of what makes you hold on to something, or when it finally goes to that elite level of an auction house?
I think timing is actually super key, right? So that is a unique type of jersey because it's the one.
Sure.
It's the jersey that represents, I believe, Babe Ruth's persona, the shot, the just the Americana of it all. So I think that piece is always going to be a high value. Now, collectibles in general, right, have only just increased over the past 5-10 years. Game used memorabilia, we've seen a huge rise in that as well. So someone who has some of these things, we talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks, owner who has the 1952 Mickey Mantle PSA 10 that he bought for a couple $100,000 in the 90s. People probably told him, you're not going to make much, whatever. That card he's been offered, I think, $30 million for, and he's turned down. So when you think about these things, timing is key, but also where we're at now in the collectibles world, how many people are getting involved in the collectibles world. And, we talk about Fanatics Fest from last week. You get back from this event, now you have Jay-Z and Tom Brady and Mike Tyson and Allen Iverson, all these people in the sports world who are getting involved in cards, Jake Paul, Livy Dunn, there's money behind this. So again, if they start to get into this world, and we're going to see that with Sotheby's and these auctions coming up in the future with these high-end pieces, I think that's only going to go up from there.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we're broadcasting from Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill here in Celebration Point. You can always watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube and, of course, wherever you get your podcast. 39 different platforms for you to go and find it. And everybody's going to be watching the NFL, and that starts soon. Obviously, college football got off to a good start. Gator fans very happy with what transpired over in Dublin.
Shout out to Ireland.
Yes. They did it right, and game day to get over there was really cool to see, and everybody booing Kirk Herbstreit, Florida State wise, because they always thought that, but the guy that came now to it is Nick Saban.
Yeah,
and I guess maybe even from a memorabilia standpoint, we're probably talking about the greatest college coach ever.
Yeah,
for all the national championships, everything that he's done. Do you think even with something like that, are coaches a big deal? Like, would somebody like Saban be something because he's not on the field anymore? Does that maybe increase some value of what he does?
Yeah, I think it's how coaching ends. So, like, I would parallel him to someone like Belichick, right? So Belichick's stuff was at an incredibly high level during those runs. And then his rookie cards, PSA 10s, these cards are from a pro set pack, junk wax era, right? Some of your old PC back in the day. You start to see, like, massive payments on this autograph cards, doing really well. But then how he kind of ended, his stock has come down quite a bit. Couldn't get a job after it's just a very strange kind of setup. Whereas Saban, I think, really left on a high horse, riding off in the sunset. And now he's offering this expertise on that level. So it's the next chapter for him. And so his collectibles, he doesn't sign a lot, number one. So his stuff is always worth a lot. We all know Crimson Tide. The faithful are the craziest fan base probably out there. And so they're all, he is their everything, right? He's their God when it comes to football. So I take that back because you got Bear Bryant and some other guys as well, to throw in the mix. But something like Bear Bryant, right? I bring him up. I have some of his autographs, put those away. Those kinds of things will only appreciate, after someone passes away. But Nick's going to be around for a while, and we just we hope, and you see that there is that appreciation for coaches, appreciation for the autographs, things like that. But at times, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And hopefully, it doesn't make a comeback to go coach Miami or something.
Well, nobody appreciates when you talk about your own fantasy football team, but it is that time. I think there's always that rule that nobody cares who's on your team, what's it about, who you're starting. But it is a fun time because now the NFL, they've got to make these cuts, and all these people are going to be without jobs. You see guys finding jobs, and you look at the industry. But Jameel and I are in a fantasy team, and they randomly do it right before the draft and tell you where your position is. So I was 11, he was 12. So,
in a 12-team league.
Yeah, in a 12-team league. So Jerk stole my Jaden Waddle pick early on in the fourth round. But, it's always fun. So I think, as we talk about this, I know so many of you out there play fantasy football, but it's that time to get together with buddies and talk smack and have fun team names or, just do different things. So it's a cool time of year.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some. I've seen some team names out there. There's some ridiculous ones. So make sure in the YouTube or Facebook comments, make sure you write some of your favorite fantasy team names down, or maybe your team. But the thing about fantasy that I really enjoy is it really, I'm starting to see this more now because in the card shop we see a lot of fathers and sons, mothers and daughters and sons, or whatever, involve uncles, aunts, grandpas. I'm starting to see more of these, leagues where guys are coming in. Oh, my son and I are in this league together. So it's another way to bond. It's another way to grow. And then, of course, when Marvin Harrison Jr. scores that touchdown, or Jaden Daniels throws his first touchdown and has a good run, people are going to want those cards, so they come in, and if you're on their fantasy team, it's an extra boost, right? Yeah. So we've literally had people come into our store who have said, "Man, this guy's killed it for me in fantasy. Like, I want to buy some of his autograph cards." They don't know a lick about cards, but they want a card of his, or I want his rookie card. So I can appreciate what fantasy football has done for the community. It gets us together to talk trash to each other, but we have a staff group that that Jeff and I are gonna, we'll update each other, and especially when Jeff and I play, we'll make sure to have a bet or something.
No doubt.
So it is a beautiful thing what fantasy football has done for, I think, the hobby in general, as well as just fandom.
Yeah, and I think that's really neat, and maybe that's a trend that could be started for all of you out there that play fantasy football. You are collectors and you get all into it. There's always these weird things. If you lose your fantasy league, you got to make them do something really strange and random. But if you win, maybe your local card shop, and maybe Jameel, you can start this tradition, is you get like the 8 starters from your lineup, and you have those cards and you put them in a case or something, and then that's your trophy for a fantasy championship or something like that.
Yeah, I can see
the
that.
Players, a lot of really cool stuff can happen through that.
You could do so much with cards and fantasy football, right? And even memorabilia, which is another beautiful thing. And I just am excited to think that there's an increased awareness, right, to the NFL, to college sports during this time. This week in August to September, right as we lead up, everybody is talking. Everyone's an expert.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about football, and it's a beautiful thing. And then, of course, we roll into basketball, hockey, end of baseball. So it's the beautiful time, the beautiful season of what is, the culmination of fall sports.
That's what it's all about. All right, well, speaking of baseball, we've got a baseball guru joining us next. Chris Burke, former Tennessee Volunteer. His team won the national championship this year. He was actually on the broadcast call for ESPN, so little cool moment there for him. But he also hit a homer that I didn't like back in the day, and even a homer off me. And that's what I wasn't talking about.
I'm sure I'll bring it up.
Yes, you will. We'll talk to Chris Burke when we come back on the Meelypod Hobby Podcast.
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
All right, we welcome you back to the Meelypod Hobby Podcast. Jeff and Jameel inside the Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in the podcast room, so always great. And our guest here today, I kind of almost equate him to Steve Spurrier. It's just a guy with a great mind, very analytical, looks at things and just addresses it, and just he knows his craft. So happy to have Chris Burke.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Good to see you. Looks like you got a little workout in. You're making us jealous.
Yeah, it's a trillion here, so forgive my towel. But it's I got a few things going on outside. It's that time of year where the broadcasting schedule has kind of been put to rest for the most part. So a lot of home projects, and it's like 97 here today. So wow. Of course that's just Tuesday for you guys, but up here that's a little abnormal. I'm in Kentucky, so. Well,
the normal thing is, we talk sports and different stuff. So, I thought it'd be great to have you on. So let's, a little baseball first. And I think, we were there in Clemson together. You were obviously in Omaha, and, we got to be a part of that. But how awesome is it now to just see what has happened to college baseball, like what's it's turned into? You got to be at the draft as well, and being a part of that. So it's crazy to think what this sport has become over the last decade or so.
No doubt. And feel very fortunate to, my career, I was kind of done with the playing side of things and actually retired with the purpose of coaching, and it just didn't quite go the way that I thought. And so I'd had some people recommend that maybe I would have some success in the broadcasting world. So I tried it, and I was really fortunate to get in right before the launch of the SEC network. And so, I really feel blessed to have seen the growth. I got back into the game after a decade in pro ball and having played in the SEC, and it had changed. Clearly it had changed. But in the 10-year, I've actually been doing it 12 years, but in the 10 years, I think since the advent of the SEC network, I feel like the sport, every 3 years or so, and especially post-COVID, has really taken off. And I think there's a ton of reasons for it, but mostly I think the post-COVID world of shrinking minor league baseball, shrinking the draft, and then you get NIL, transfer portal, and the conference network and the digital networks. And, the college game has really, at least from its equivalency standpoint, gotten on par with what I would say college basketball is to NBA basketball and what college football is to NFL football. I'm not saying we do those numbers per se in ratings, but I just think again, equivalent to their major league sport. I feel like college baseball has carved out a niche that is very relevant in the world of baseball at large. And you see Dylan Cruz make his debut yesterday, and you think Wyatt Langford, Paul Skeens, and Dylan Cruz were the biggest stars in college baseball last year, and now they're all in the big leagues. And as unique as that is right now, I don't think it's going to be super rare moving forward. No, I don't know that all the players will reach their level of success that I think those three players are going to have. But still, I just think it's a great sign of how advanced college baseball has become and how popular and how great the development of the players has become at that level.
Well, and even from a stadium standpoint, back when you were out playing, late 90s, early 2000s, it was just, kind of normal stadiums. Now we're almost looking at AA, AAA parks and all these college facilities that are absolutely tremendous atmospheres. It's got to be fun to see what the environments and what these stadiums have turned into. It makes a kid almost want to make that decision to go to college.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, as much as it's tempting to get paid $3, $4, $5 million out of the draft, like once you go to the minor leagues, you play in relative obscurity unless you make it to the big leagues, right? You go to college baseball and work your way in one of the starting lineups for one of these major programs, and you are living out a dream of playing baseball on TV and playing in front of 6, 8, 10,000 people. And Jeff, kind of what I said about how it's grown, I feel like every 3 or 4 years. Like when I first started calling games, you had most of the SEC West was at a very high level from a stadium standpoint, not all of it, but most of it. And only really South Carolina in the East was at what I would call a elite stadium facility level. And then Florida, and then Kentucky, and of course Vanderbilt's continued to come. And then obviously Tennessee's on the second half of $100 million renovation. And so you see Georgia's doing huge things to their facility. Like now all of a sudden everybody in the West is decked out. The East is pretty much completely caught up other than Missouri. And, everybody is now invested big time in college baseball.
Yeah, no, I mean, the stadiums, I just think about, the experience, right? We talk about experiential retail in our shop, and the experience of going to a baseball game has been elevated in the college side, and it's amazing to watch. It's amazing to see.
Sure.
Thinking about baseball and thinking about your career, Chris, I'm a big Cardinals fan, so whenever I see, Jeff, a big Braves fan, upset about things, it gets me tickled inside. So I think he's still a little bitter about this amazing home run that you had in the 18th inning to beat the Braves in the playoffs. Yeah. We had a guy last week from the UFC talking about energy, and like he actually brought that up. He's like, remember, it's like hitting a walk-off home run. You know what it feels like. Can you share a little bit with our listeners, like if just your memories of that game, and then also what it's like to go through 18 innings and being the guy to end it?
Yeah, crazy game. Weird in the sense that it was a noon start locally in Houston. So it's funny. I was telling somebody this. It usually comes up somewhere somehow once a week or so. And somebody was asking me about it. Actually, it was the other day at church. Somebody was asking me about it. And I told him it's probably up there with the all-time misremembered home runs ever. Like, because nobody can get the inning right. Most people that tell me they watched it act like it was in the middle of the night, when in reality, it started at 1 Eastern. So it was, I really think the home run happened like almost right at 6 hours into the game. So like, if you were in the United States, the latest it was 7 Eastern when it happened. But people tell me they stayed up all night, and they'll never forget the 14th inning. What's it feel like hitting a home run to send your team to the World Series? How cool is it to hit a grand slam to walk off? And I was like, it's, again, like almost never does somebody ask me about it where they remember the details. But I never correct them. It's always fun to talk about it. But, I think the funniest thing about that, I've told a lot of people this part of the story, but I just think it's worth telling. Roger Clemons made his only relief appearance of his entire career that game. Mm-hmm. And so from a memorabilia standpoint, matter of fact, since it's a memorabilia show, I'll take you to I don't have much. This is where I call the games, or I got something they gave me for the Tennessee Baseball Hall of Fame. This is like a little painting from when we clinched, against the Cardinals. But this is probably I don't know how well you can see this. Can you see that any good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It says, Chris, way to go, kid. You made the old man look good. Rocket. Of course, he signs things. Roger Clemons, size 7. And this is him picking me up right after the home run. So, and as a collector, I still have those batting gloves in the bat.
There you go.
Just chilling in my house. But just to prove to you I'm such non-memorabilia guy, they're like in the corner of a closet. But anyway, that is probably my most fond piece of memorabilia, just because somehow I got tied to, the second probably most famous right-handed pitcher in the history of the sport, behind Nolan Ryan and Roger Clemons. He and I are kind of tied in this game together because he got the win in his only relief appearance. He pitched like 4 innings of BP to his sons during the game. The guy has like a bionic arm. It was crazy. But if we'd have lost, we were going to have to face John Smoltz the next day in Atlanta. And Andy Pettit wasn't even in the stadium that day because he had 103-degree fever and he was puking. And he was supposed to face John Smoltz the next day in Atlanta. So we were kind of all in to win this game. We got down 6-1. Berkman hits a grand slam in the 8th. Ausmus, who I always feel guilty because I feel like Ausmus had the biggest hit of the game, 2 outs in the 9th against Cal Farnsworth, and Brad Ausmus hit a home run with 2 outs in the 9th to tie the game up. You talk about clutch. So anyway, the game goes 18 innings. Rocket comes in, scoreless 16th, scoreless 17th, scoreless 18th. And, Rocket had been with us 04, 05. He won the Cy Young in 04. He actually had a better year in 05. And he had just kind of become this mythical superhero kind of figure. So he actually, by the way all the things worked out, he was up before me. And when I tell you the place was on their feet when he was up to bat, the place was going nuts when he was up to bat. And I'll be honest with you, Roger was not exactly a power hitter. And even though he looks like he would be one. And in the on-deck circle, I kind of thought, this dude might hit a homer. He's that much of a superhero, And Joey Devine was in the game, and Joey was nasty. He was 94 to 96, low 3/4 with a nasty sweeping breaking ball. So he punched Rocket out on 4 pitches. And I kid you not, the whole place sat down. You could feel the air come out of the building as I'm walking up to bat. And so it wasn't exactly this raucous setting, So I come up to bat and I'm thinking, Chipper Jones has been playing third base for 6 hours. I wasn't real crazy about the idea of facing Devine. So I'm I'm going to see if I can bunt for a hit. So I go to square to bunt for a hit, and he throws it to the backstop. So now I'm a 1-0 count. There's nobody on base. I'm he's a sinker baller. I'm I bet this guy tries to throw me a fastball in here. I'm going to try to get the head out, see if I can get a ball out of the park. And he almost hits me with the 1-0 pitch. It's right at my belt buckle. So that really got my eyes, on the inner third of the plate. And again, I'm, short porch in Houston. I'm a pull hitter anyway. And I'm dude, if this guy throws me anywhere close to the inner third of the plate, I'm gonna try to hook it in the seats. And sure enough, got the pitch, made a good swing, and hit a line drive in the left field seat. So, it doesn't always work out that simply, but in that moment, in that at bat, everything came together perfectly. And then after the game, Rocket picks me up. And it's funny now being in the TV business, Jeff. You'll appreciate this, and I promise I'll shut up. But Erin Andrews is the sideline reporter for the game.
Yeah, and she was a Gator.
She's a Gator. That's right. There you go. And so she told me this story a couple years later. But being in TV, you can appreciate this now. They're in her ear, get Roger Clemons, get Roger Clemons. I'm not the story, he is. So get Roger Clemons. So she grabs Roger and pulls him over. Well, I've been hugging people and celebrating. She had started to ask Roger a question, and Roger sees me come by, puts his paw on my back, rips me over into the interview, and didn't even answer her question. He just goes, "How about the kid?" and walks off. And she was totally flustered because she hadn't even thought of what to ask me. So we had a laugh about that a few years later, but that's just kind of teammate Rocket was. And, like I said, there's a lot of things I love and I'm appreciative about that moment in that game, but I think being tied to Roger is up there on that list.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I still hated you then, and especially you owned me in college, so I hated you even more back then. And now you're awesome. Now obviously being away from it, you've got all your boys, all the kids you coach, and I know how much of a competitor you are, and obviously working out, you're still doing all that stuff. What's it like? When are the kids talking smack? Are they thinking, "Hey, I'm better than Dad. I'm gonna out dribble them. I can beat them in hoops. I can hit it further. I can beat them in a race." Like you're not ever gonna let these guys beat you, are you?
I'm trying not to. The oldest one's getting there, which like I tell him, and I have to sometimes tell myself, like, I'm trying my best to hold on, but it'll be a good day when he gets there. Because if he doesn't ever get there, then he's got problems, right? If he can't beat his middle-aged old man, what are we doing here? So, no, but it's fun. They keep me young, and it's cool to see them get to an age where I think they can appreciate some of those things. I have to be careful about not putting unfair expectations on some of their things. Jeff, I know you have a son that's now going through the college process and just, finished high school. And I think there's a sense of humility and gratitude that comes with the reflection on your career that, sometimes you look back and when you do it, it feels, I would just say for my career, I felt like everything I did was kind of just a very natural, normal next step. Mm-hmm. And then when you get outside of it and you look back and you're now watching your kids try to come up in it, and I do a lot of private instruction. So I watch some of these players that I mentor and coach go through, and you're like, man, that is a really hard ladder to climb. And so I have a tremendous amount of gratitude that I was fortunate to play the game at the highest level. And I try to remember that when I get frustrated with my boys for not executing something I think they're capable of doing, or I try not to put expectations on them that burden them, to make them feel like, I would never want them to feel like whatever they accomplish is not good enough because I was able to accomplish whatever I was able to accomplish. So I think that's the part that I really try to juggle. Perfect. Now as a dad. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned your kids and also some names before, thinking about Skeens and Wyatt and Dylan Cruz being called up. So your boys, do they get into cards? Like, do they display them, and show Dad this and say, hey Dad, how do you think you do against this guy, or what do you think about this guy? Are they getting into it a little bit?
Yeah, they are. It's funny how it goes in stages. My oldest one's he's a freshman. He's he likes looking at the younger boys' card books now, but he's kind of past it. But my 12-year-old, my 6th grader, he's kind of in and out of it. He's still but my 9 and 6-year-old are all in. And I love it when they're reorganizing, and it's kind of sweet. They have a dad page, which is kind of cool. But, they go seasonally, right? So like football season, they got all their quarterbacks and receivers that they love. And then basketball season, they got whoever's the new hottest name. Last year it was like, can I get an Anthony Edwards card and that kind of deal. And come baseball season, it's college baseball is so big in our home that they really try to get like a lot of the rookie cards. To them, Skeens and Langford and Cruz and this past year's class, especially in our house, Christian Moore or Blake Burke or Dylan Dreiling, to them, that's just as cool as Ohtani or Trout or whatever, So from our perspective, it works out good because those cards are a lot cheaper to buy than the superstars. So it is fun to watch your boys get into the sports through the collectible side of things.
Chris, you talked about how hard it is to get to that big league level. And I know, the best of the best in college, certainly may not even get there. Heck, I mean, I know a guy that won the NCAA championship here at Florida and then never even once made a shot on the PGA Tour. Like, it's just, it's really, really hard to get to that level. So, when you think about even you're a stud in college, SEC Player of the Year, in the UT Hall of Fame, like all this stuff, but, didn't have this long, prosperous Major League Baseball career, but what's it like to just even get to that point, to be in the dugout? You talked about being with Roger and that group. Like, how rewarding was that just to even get there for a day or two?
I think, again, like I said earlier, my career went very linearly, if I can make up that word. It was I kept reaching all these goals, right, and it was just happening and happening. Of course, I wish the game was a little more modern when I was coming up in it, where they didn't make us go through such a long process to get to the big leagues. I love how they're trusting kids' ability to make adjustments at the major league level now more than they ever did. But I struggled for about a year and a half in the minor leagues, and then I was in the futures game in 03. I was in the futures game in 04. I got called up that year and thought I was just going to keep checking boxes all the way until I was an all-star and a franchise player, which is what I just kind of always thought I would be. And then, what happens, you look back and now, analyzing the way it all went down is I do think there's a window, and there's outliers to all this, but I think there's a window at 23, 24, 25 years old where it's very helpful to get a player out there 400, 500, 600 at bats in that stage in their life, because that's really where you're most explosive and physically able, but you're also growing in your maturity and your professionalism, where it's like if you can really learn the major leagues during that period of time, then at 26 to 30, you should be really ready to prosper and flourish, And I got there at 24, and really through 26, I was a super utility player, playing a bunch of different positions. I played a lot. 300 at bats 3 straight years.
Yeah.
So it's not that I didn't play. I just never was in my position playing every single day. And like a lot of guys, had injuries. I blew out my left labrum, and coming back from that in 07 was just not right. Like, I just had no juice. And that was the year it turned out where the Astros were really looking at me like, is this our guy or not? So Biggio got his 3,000th hit that year, which is another pretty cool collector's item.
Yeah.
I have a signed ball from him and bat from him that day. But, yeah, he got his 3,000th hit that year. And then next year was supposed to be my time. But it turned out new management, new GM. I didn't play great that year, and they decided to move on from me and sign a free agent. And they traded me with Chad Quall for Jose Valverde. And then, like so many players, like once you get traded from your original team, things can get messy, And I didn't play great in 08 with Arizona. And then in 09 with San Diego, I kind of started bouncing up and down. And by I got to 2010, I was just like, Sarah and I were having kids, and our second oldest, our oldest boy, had some medical problems. And by the middle of 2010, I was just over it. And I got released by the Reds in the middle of the season. And I was just like, I'd been praying if this was still what I wanted to do. And God was just kind of like, let's go try something else. I was 30 years old. And really, I was playing pretty well and still young in sports terms, but just decided to move on. And like I said, it actually turned out great because I got in, I think, broadcasting right at the right time. But one thing I think, Jeff, to answer your question more specifically, I think you look back, pro sports has a lot to do with right place, right time.
Yep.
And I also think there's organizations that are better fits. And I think I would never trade my time with the Astros for anything, because of the men that sharpened me and influenced me have changed the trajectory of my life. And I would never change that period of time. But if you're just looking at it for the best thing for my baseball career, it probably would have been helpful to be drafted by a team that wasn't in the race. Sure. Dylan Cruz is with the Nationals, right? And you just like, hey, just go play. And take it, So again, I don't want to make it sound like I didn't get time to develop, but it was a unique situation where I was asked to be a utility player. And I just never quite found my footing at the level I needed to play every day for them. And then once I got traded, like I said, I started bouncing around and kind of lost my why, to be honest with you. I lost the fire to fight through that part of my career. And I really didn't want to drag my family along for what I could tell was going to be a very nomadic period of my career. And so I just hung them up.
Well, you fast forward from those moments in his career to this summer, and Jeff and I started this podcast, and we were talking about this amazing game that we got a chance to witness, probably one of the most amazing games in college baseball history. And, of course, we get to hear your voice, and you getting to call that game. And beyond that game was we were super locked in for that. So it's kind of a full circle moment for us, right? We're thinking about when we started this podcast, and now we got Chris Burke on here, and that was one of the big points we talked about. And I was just thinking about it. We have a shop up in South Carolina, so it's in Spartanburg. It's called Meelypops SC. It's Clemson is the school that is the biggest major university closest to that shop. South Carolina Gamecocks, of course, being South in Columbia. But we were locked in for that game, right? Gators, Clemson, and I'm thinking back, and I'm just thinking of just a few months ago. You get a chance to call it, and you get a chance to witness probably one of the most amazing catches in college baseball history. So what was it like just being on that side, and you talk about the longevity of that game and the ups and downs of that game. Just give us your POV of that. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, wild game. One of the greatest players in college baseball history almost got thrown out like 2 seconds into it. And we were all holding our breath there. Like, you could please do not throw Cags out of this game. Unfortunately, the umpires had too much of a presence in that game for my taste. But you had one of the great college players of all time, front and center. Oddly kind of, his pitching, the trajectory of his pitching was very odd at the end. All of a sudden he's throwing 89 miles an hour, Jeff. It was such a weird thing, right?
Yeah. But,
he's out there doing his thing. He hits a bomb to center field. And,
yeah.
Florida just keeps responding. And oh gosh, I'm forgetting the right fielder's name, Jeff. The storybook of the right fielder for Florida.
Oh, gosh.
That,
yeah.
Come on, we haven't forgotten him already. The kid,
It'll come to
kid
me.
who didn't even play till May.
Yeah.
Come on, we gotta remember his name. But he has these magical moments, and I kept saying all broadcasts like Canarella is just, he's the guy. He's the straw that stirs the drink for this program. Like, if they can get him up in a big spot, they got a shot. Sure enough, he hits this legendary 3-run bomb. And Wilson, right?
Ashton Wilson, yes,
name.
there you go. You got
Ashton Wilson, yeah, there you go. Ashton Wilson puts him up. You're thinking, that's it. Canarella hits a homer. We're off the extra innings. The place is going to cave in. And then is Wilson the one that hits the ball that he catches?
Yep, it was.
Then I think Wilson hits the ball that he catches. It's like, no disrespect to Willie Mays. I said it at the time. I kind of lost my mind, so forgive me if that was annoying on the broadcast. But like I said it at the time, like, no disrespect to Mr. Mays, but Canarella's catch is harder. I mean, people don't realize there's a hill in center field. He 2-foot, 2-hand jumps over the hill, full speed into the fence, and kind of like corrals the ball. I mean, it was just this spectacular play by a kid who we'll probably see play in the big leagues for a very long time. And, then Florida just refuses to go away. And then in the weirdest of super regional moments, which this is what we love about super regionals, Florida walks South Carolina off on their own field, which as a broadcaster, you guys would, and Jeff, I know like you have to keep reminding yourself, like, Florida's the home team.
Yeah.
Florida's batting last, So, and in the middle of it, if you're watching on TV, we lost our satellite feed. So we went for like 3 innings. We were at one camera, but certainly a game. And we had the drama with the umpires and a couple ejections. Like, that game had everything. But definitely, I think the catch. It's weird. You're a Cardinals fan. We went to the World Series in 2005, but in some regards, Albert Pujols' homer in Game 5 of the NLCS is the most remembered thing about that series. And in a weird way, like, Florida won that Super Regional, but I think Cam Canarella's catch might be the most remembered thing from that game in a weird way,
Yeah, great point. And just what was on the line, too. If he doesn't make that catch, the game's over.
Yeah.
Like, that's what was
your
so
season's
crazy about
over.
it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and then come and they take the lead. It was nuts. All right. So before we let you go, we always do this kind of like rapid fire thing. So I'm gonna just have you first thing you think of, what comes out. It's brought to you by Titan MRI. All right. Who'd you get your first major league hit off of?
First major league hit. was off of Dan Herron, who I also hit my first AAA homer off of.
Wow.
And I was pinch hitting for Roger Clemons, and it was the only at bat of my major league career that my 88-year-old grandpa saw. So that was pretty cool.
That is
in Busch Stadium.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, pretty sweet. All right. Do you know the only college team you ever hit 2 homers in a game off of?
Florida.
Jerk face, man.
You did. Better environment for a game, Ole Miss or Mississippi State?
Ooh. I'll go State.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I would go the other one, but I mean it's one or the other.
Okay. I called one of my favorite supers at Mississippi State, so that's just
that's in your mind, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, would you like better, second base or shortstop?
I think I took more pride in shortstop, but I truly enjoyed playing second base. Shortstop always felt a little short of the top tier at that position, whereas second base, I felt like there was no play on the field I couldn't make. So I really enjoyed playing second base from a standpoint of feeling fully equipped to play the position.
All right, then along those lines, what's better, making this unbelievable defensive diving play or hitting a home run?
I would always say home run. I love the athleticism associated with making certain plays. And if I'm being honest, I probably miss that as much as anything. Hitting a triple, scoring from first on a double, making a jump throw, going up the middle. Those kind of athletic plays are probably things I miss the most. But hitting a home run is I think, the hardest singular thing to do in sports. So even though Aaron Judge would maybe beg to differ, but I'll take hitting a home run.
All right, who would you rather face, Oswalt, Rocket, or Andy Pettitte? Who would you rather face?
I would rather face Pettitte. And Pettitte's like my big brother, but I liked hitting lefties, and he pitched in, and I could pull the ball, so that was not a terrible matchup for me.
All right, I won't put your name in this question, but the other two. Better golfer, Dave Neal or Kyle Peterson?
Oh, Kyle Peterson. Dave Neal just begs for shots. That's all he wants. He just wants shots after shot. But I will say, do not sleep on Dave Neal. Don't judge a book by its cover. He can golf his ball. He's a pretty good player.
Speaking of balls, how many hole-in-ones do you have?
Well, I'll turn this question on you. I have one for sure. Okay, 6-iron, 178 yards. Actually, my first instructional league. That was my first. But I made another hole-in-one at a par 3 course. Does that count?
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess 2.
So you got 2. Awesome.
Yeah.
Best ballpark food.
Man, that's an interesting question. Probably, I just say LSU. I love Cajun food, and those people will take care of you. You go out there, they'll give you some etouffee or some jambalaya or some gumbo, and that's right in my wheelhouse.
Very true. Better athlete, pitcher or position player?
Oh gosh. I mean, next question. I mean, what are we talking?
All right, so for everybody,
KP put you up to that or what?
No, I just anytime we're on a broadcast, like a pitcher makes like this spectacular play, best athlete on the field. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I will say, and you've heard me say this. Every great starting pitcher, I would not put bullpen guys in this category, but every great starting pitcher I ever played with, and I played with Clemens, Oswalt, Pettitte, Peavy, Randy Johnson, Brandon Webb, Dan Herron. I played with a lot of great starting pitchers. They were all really high-level athletes. That's one of the reasons I was so sure Skeens was going to be a superstar, because it was just like every single thing that you needed him to be, he was an 80 in.
All right, last thing.
So,
and I totally agree. Yeah. And it seems like all those guys, they're just good at every sport. It's crazy.
They are.
It's pretty spectacular. All right, so so many kids watch this, and certainly all the way up to older adults too. But just to put it into perspective, like how hard is it to hit a baseball? Is it the hardest thing in any sport?
We know it's funny. I think when you're really locked in, it doesn't feel as hard. The ball moves slower than it would ever than you would ever think it moves when you're in a good place. When you're in a bad place, you get to a place where you're not sure you'll ever get another hit. This is a good Craig Biggio story. He was like 32 hits shy of 3,000. And I was eavesdropping on a conversation that he was having with Vinny Castillo. They were former teammates, and Vinny was like hitting fungos with the Rockies, and we were in Colorado. And I heard him and Vinny talking, and I was 10 feet behind them, kind of listening in. Vinny's like, dude, you're right there. You're right, you're right around the corner. And he goes, man, I don't know if I'm going to get another one. And there's just and 2 weeks later he was locked in. He got 4 hits the night he got 3,000. But it is funny how that deal, as much as anything, I think can really come and go. And I know you play a lot of golf and you watch some of these golfers like rocket up leaderboards, and they have it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then 6 months later they can't make a cut. I think golf is similar because it's such a fine motor sport. But today more than ever, with the extreme nature of the velocities, you look at and I'm not a get off my lawn old school baseball guy. Like, it's not an accident that 238 or whatever it is the average major league batting average. Like, it's that hard to square the ball up and hit it where they're not standing. You also got these world-class athletes out there that get paid to run it down whenever you hit it,
Sure.
And so, I'm sure there's other athletes in other sports that would, give me a run for my money. But I think the combination necessary of hand-eye coordination, bat speed, and then the strength to be able to move the ball in a way that it's not catchable, in the most raw way to put it, it's a pretty hard thing to do.
Well, Chris, you didn't make this hard. Nice and easy. Appreciate your time, all the stories, and we'll get some cards out for the boys.
Yeah, definitely.
Jameel will send you some, and cool stuff, and look forward to a fun college football season. And I know you got to be ecstatic the Vols pulled it off, and I guess just to to wrap it up and say bye. I mean, did you shed a tear when they won the Natty? Like, you were up there in the booth? Like, I know it meant so much.
Yeah, I think I envy you, Jeff. Like, it'd be nice to be on a home crew in a game like that. It really honestly took me about 2 hours after the final out to kind of let my hair down, let my guard down, and like enjoy it as an alumni and a fan of the school and the program. Calling the game, I was probably overly careful to not be a homer. But now a lot of distance away from that. I think you obviously Florida has a gold standard college baseball program, and to see Tony put Tennessee right up there next to Florida, at the top of the game, pretty remarkable. It really is. I love the university. I felt like I could always see a possibility of it being a destination college baseball program, but somebody had to get in there and actually do it. A vision's one thing, a reality's another. And Tony literally can't get enough credit for what he's done. And Danny White has paid him in kind. So, a new contract and a new stadium that are in line with what he's built. But definitely very happy and proud of what those guys have done.
All right, man. Appreciate you. That is Chris Burke.
Take care.
Back with more of the Meelypod Hobby Podcast right after this.
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
This is Jameel, owner of the Meelypop shop, Gainesville's home for collectibles of all sorts, including every single type of sports cards, whether it be Panini, Topps, Leaf, Upper Deck. We have it. Come on in, get yourself a box, a pack, get yourself some supplies, get into our breaks, get your Pokemon, get your Yu-Gi-Oh! All the other different kinds of TCG products that we carry and shop are always fully in stock. You can find our stuff on our website as well, meelypops.com. That's another way you can interact with the store, or you can just come into the shop. We're located off 39th Avenue by I-75 behind Walgreens and Sonny's. Stop on by. We're open every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And you can check us out on our social media platforms: Instagram, TikTok, whatnot, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'd love to see you. Come on out to the shop, have some fun, be a part of the card community here in Gainesville, and always go Gators.
All right, segment 3 of the Meelypod Hobby Podcast, coming to you from our Meldon Law Studios. Meldon Law, we won't back down, and we never back down from showcasing the new wax.
Yep.
And, of course, that's brought to you by WaxStat, the easiest way to get real-time price comps on wax boxes, sealed products from your mobile phone or your laptop. Save time and money. Get the best deal on wax by visiting waxstat.com. I was talking to you leading up to what was going to happen today with the wax stuff, and you said that Topps hasn't made a certain product in more than a decade. I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, How does that even happen? So now I guess people are pretty psyched for what's coming out this week.
Topps Chrome Basketball is here. So this, I mean, when you think about sports cards, you know, we think of the Americana side, we think of the historical side as baseball. Currently, I would say people are really hyped on football. But when you talk about value, high sales, like the Kobe Bryant logo man a few weeks ago, it's over $1.4 million. Basketball is really the worldwide, like the sport when it comes to everybody. I mean,
knows who they
when
are.
you talk about Chinese collectors, European collectors, Australian collectors, you talk about some of these like in Malaysia and Indonesia, the world loves basketball. Canada, I mean, thinking about all these places, basketball cards have been quintessential, I think, to the hobby and the value of them. So, Wembanyama, of course, we have the Alien this year. You know, the hobby has been ignited again in basketball. So, Topps has had the Chrome for everything, for all that they put out, but they've not had the licensing for basketball. Panini has had that for the last decade or so. And so it's been 14 years since Topps Chrome Basketball has resurfaced. And so there's a lot of that OG collectors coming back out. It is non-licensed, so they are going to look a little funny. You know, they're not going to have the jerseys. Wembanyama is going to be in a black and white jersey. Okay. It's going to say San Antonio. It's not going to have the Spurs on it. But I believe they're doing this to kind of whet the appetite for the next years when they do have the licenses. They did this with Bowman Chrome Football University. The first year they came out, they had Bryce Young on the cover, and it just looked funny at Alabama, but you couldn't see, it didn't say Crimson Tide. The next year it comes out, the product was incredible, right? So you have Anthony Richardson in his Gator uniform. You have all these things. It's the Chrome University, right? So you have all these things, and that product just accentuated. And then in this next year that we had it, Caleb Williams is on the cover, and there's this huge hype for Bowman Chrome University, which has brought a lot of fervor back, I believe, to college sport cards.
Sure.
So now we have basketball, and so we have the two iterations that they came out. There'll be blaster boxes and monster boxes, but from the hobby side, there's the Breaker's Delight, which, as you guys know, Topps is really pushing this one-pack product. And then, of course, for the traditionalists and the people who love to rip, Topps Chrome Hobby Box, which you get 2 autographs in this one, 2 in this one, so it's kind of equal, and they're close in price. The retailing, if you look on WaxStat, you can see the trends right now, $500 to $550 a box, but LeBron autographs are in here, right? You have Wembanyama autographs as well. So these are things that we have not had in a long time as well. We talk about LeBron autographs. He doesn't have autographs because he was an Upper Deck, So now he's come over to Topps, and we have these chase cards that you can hit. So I'm excited to see what happens with this, how it's taken. I think the non-licensed thing is a holdup for a lot of collectors, but at the same time, now we have the brand back in Topps Chrome. So let's see where it goes. They brought back some of the old inserts, the Rock Stars and Youth Quakes and all these things they brought back from that, and we're just going to see how it all pans out.
Yeah, well, that sounds awesome. Well, speaking of non-licensed, I guess there's something else that's come out that's pretty much the same, but I mean, that's a box of my own heart with some old school baseball on it.
We got Clemente right on the front. So there's a lot of releases this week outside of Topps Chrome Basketball. We have Topps Composite Football, which is kind of like the Chronicles football. There's a big release in the non-sports world. It's called Avengers Metal Universe, which is all the Avenger cards and the rares and the PMGs and stuff that show up in that. But Panini has a brand new product for baseball. As you know, Panini doesn't have the baseball license, so they include non-active players. So it's Legends and Draft Picks. So it's up your alley. I mean, you love the Legends and you love the up-and-comers.
I'm non-active. Maybe I'm in there.
I mean, maybe there's a Jeff Cardozo card that you might pull. He might sign it and sneak it in the box at Meelypops. So, but it's a unique product where you get 4 hits, 3 autographs, and 1 memorabilia. It's a nice kind of design for the product. You kind of see it's coming out in the summer. It's kind of a cool the planning behind this, the packaging behind this. The thing about Panini non-license is a lot of people will say to me like, oh, well, the value's not there, and that is true. But then when you're hitting Legends autographs and they're much more potent, people really enjoy that. So another new release that I'm excited to kind of see what happens with Topps Chrome Basketball. It's just a very busy week this week. There's so many different things coming out, and we're into that football season. So now we're getting the 2023 football, the ending of that, and the end of the 23-24 basketball into 24-25 basketball, and as well 24 football. So it's a conglomeration in the hobby of all of the seasons coming together, and people love it because of the rookie class.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot right here then. Speaking of the NFL and our fantasy discussions, out of I guess it would just be three of the rookies are going to start. Who after 6 weeks, which quarterback is going to be the most valuable quarterback?
And the 3 would be May, Caleb, and Daniels.
I mean, he's got progress. I'm going to call him as the guy that starts. So, after 6 weeks, who's doing the best, and who's that one out of the 3 that these collectors want to go after?
I would say it's going to be very hard for Drake May to I think put up in that division. Sure. I got to look at the schedules, but I think it's going to be tricky for him to be in that conversation. So it's really between Daniels and Williams. Caleb Williams, I think, has the best possible opportunity to really blow up with. I think he's got some good weapons around him, and not to say that Jaden Daniels doesn't. I think Caleb Williams is the most polished and ready to go. So out the gates, they're not going to have the film on him. They're not going to know how to play him, and I think we're going to see Caleb Williams' values go up. Now, if Jaden Daniels comes out and pulls an RG3 like he did, speaking of the Washington Commanders here, in that first game, I think he beat the Saints and he had a crazy run or a throw. His stuff went crazy in 2012 when, Luck stuff was nuts too.
Yeah.
We could have a 2-pony race in this where you have 2 of those guys that are really, really pushing. My money, I would say right now, would be Caleb Williams after 6 weeks. I think Daniels, he throws a pretty ball. He's an amazing athlete. Heisman winner. I mean, we horrible memories of that Gator game, right, in LSU. 18,000 touchdowns a guy scoring. But I think at the end of the season, Daniels may figure this out, and I think he's a little bit more wet behind the ears, maybe not as much experience. I think you could see him as a more dynamic weapon than Caleb Williams. But I tend to think that the way these guys have come out and the way these guys have been so prepped and ready to go for the last 5 years, this 2024 draft class is going to be a strong one. I'd love to see Drake May do well. I think he's got a hard road, man. I think he's got a hard road to go. And then, of course, there's all the Milton, talk as well.
Of course. And then one quick one, but before we go, because, it just means that the peaks and the valleys and things that go on. Joe Burrow was probably so hot a few years ago, and he got hurt last year.
Yeah.
Like, where are his cards? Like, what if he blows up again and takes him back to the Super Bowl? Like, could that be a guy you maybe try to go get right now?
Well, I would say this about football. It's just like right before baseball starts, all cards are at an all-time high right now. So Burrow is one of those guys at the very top. Him and Mahomes, Stroud, these guys, Richardson, these guys are way on the top side. So if you're buying those cards right now, pump your brakes and think for a second. Are these guys? Look at their first 4 games.
Yeah.
Are they going to be 3-1 or at least 2-2? If they're not, and you're not really believing that, their values are going to come down dramatically. Well, that might be a better time to buy, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a couple. I was looking at some. I think it might be the Bengals, or they have some really tough games coming up. Those first 4 games. So Burrow, to me, he's primed. He's got the hype. Joey B and all of Joey Cool, all the things that he's got. He's got that extra element, the LSU kind of background too, I think plays into it as well. If they come out and they're winning that AFC North division, right? His values are going to be very solid. I think the same thing too with the Chiefs. You have the dynasty potential of a three-peat, right? If that were to happen, and Mahomes at his age, right, his cards are going to see another giant increase. But again, that's a long time away. We got a lot of football to play. So I would say be careful with what you buy right now. Sure. Wait, if you can wait till week 1, week 2, see if some stuff kind of levels off or comes down. A lot of hype right now. The Burbank Card Show is just held. It's been rebranded as the West Coast Card Show. So this is this massive card show out on the West Coast. And I talked to a lot of guys that went to it. They all said the same thing. Football was on fire, but the prices were so high. So think through that a little bit. I think you kind of see that always before every season. We saw it with baseball this year. And just be mindful when you're buying those cards.
All right. So, if you want to buy into the podcast. We have a lot of fun doing it. Another great guest in Chris Burke today. So, tell your friends about it.
Yeah.
Tell them to find it. So many different platforms. Again, listen and watch Facebook, YouTube, and a million different podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Overcast, and plenty others. Well, Jameel, another fun week. Big week for college football. It's actually week 1, not week 0. So that Gainesville's almost center stage with Miami, one of the bigger games. I think there's 3 really big ones across the country, and we're right in the heart of it.
Yeah.
So it should be a lot of fun here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill this weekend.
It's going to be nuts. It's like family reunion, you know what I mean? We'll have everybody back in town. Shout out to one of our previous guests, Laura Rutledge will be broadcasting on SEC Nation here. And so a lot of things exciting for Florida. Football season is here. If you don't know, our city pretty much doubles in size during these games, and it's just crazy to get around, but we love it, and everybody loves their Gators. So.
And the Freak will be back in town. Javon Curse will be here as well, so that'll always be fun. I'll tell you the Javon Curse story next week. That means you got to listen. All right, for Jameel, I am Jeff. That was the Meelypod Hobby Podcast.
Thank you for joining us. We will see you next Thursday at noon.